Hi, I'm Leesburg City Commissioner Dan Robuck, and at the city we've been getting a lot of feedback about electric rates. We know people's bills have gotten a lot higher. People are struggling with that, and I think it's important that people understand a little bit about our utility, what's causing those rates, and what we can expect in the future. So today I'm joined by an expert on all things power, Jacob Williams. Jacob is the CEO of the Florida Municipal Power Agency, and we work very closely with them in the city of Leesburg. So Jacob, could you explain to me a little bit about who the FMPA is and what you do?
Sure. FMPA is owned by 31 cities, including Leesburg as one of the owners, and we provide electricity to about 25 of them, partially or fully. And then you as the city then take the power and distribute it to your individual customers. But we're the wholesale power provider, the generator, et cetera, for all of Leesburg Power.
And when you say you provide us with power, where does that come from? Where do you get the power?
Yeah, FMPA has around 1,800 megawatts of power plants. 80% of our electricity comes from natural gas-fired generation. This fiscal year we just ended, about 12% comes from coal, 5% from nuclear, and a couple percent from solar and other renewables.
Great, yeah, and I think that's a thing that a lot of people don't understand. I know it was new for me when I got on the commission, is that through the FMPA, we actually own power generation. So when you say plants, like, you're actually employing the people that run the plants themselves.
That's right. We have two major facilities. Cane Island down in Kissimmee produce about 50% of our power. In fact, last week, the Cane Island facility was recognized as one of the top gas plants in the world this past year, and for high availability. So it's a very well-run plant, one of the top plants in the nation. We also have a facility down in Fort Pierce called Treasure Coast, and that again is another natural gas-fired plant. So those are plants you all are part owners in.
Great, I think it's a really good explanation, important for people to understand.
Yep.
And then of course the key words there when we talk about our electric bills are natural gas.
Natural gas. Yep.
And now is it just the FMPA that's dependent on natural gas? What do other utilities in the state of Florida look like?
Yeah, the state of Florida as a whole, all the utilities combined are about 70 to 75% of their electricity this past year comes from natural gas. Florida is the most gas-dependent state of any in the country for its electric supply. You know, people think of maybe Texas being more and all that. No, Florida is by far the most dependent. So because natural gas prices roll up, then all of Florida's electric prices are going up. It's a direct relationship.
Right, and now when you talk about prices going up, could you give a little bit of a sense of the scale that we're seeing there?
Yeah. If you go back a year and a half, we were probably at under $3 a million BTU, and that's how gas is bought and sold. Today we're running anywhere between $7 to $9 a million, so it's a 200 to 300% increase in the price of natural gas in literally the last year and a half.
Wow, that's certainly significant, and I think that's where we're passing on the cost to our customers is through our power cost adjustment, because as we get the bill for that natural gas, we have to pass it on.
Yep.
Now, where's that natural gas that we're using? Where does it come from?
Natural gas in the United States either comes out of kind of the Texas, Louisiana area and a little further west out in New Mexico, or it comes out of the fields out of Pennsylvania and Ohio, where traditionally that's over the last 10 years has grown with the fracking and the shale gas revolution that's going on. So we get gas kind of both directions. There's no gas production in the southeast per se until you get all the way over to the Louisiana border, so to speak.
And now with that, I know a lot of that is a byproduct of oil, and oil prices are significantly higher than they were 2 or 3 years ago. You think that would lead to more gas rigs being drilled? Is that happening, or? Yeah,
you would think when oil prices hit $100 a barrel, you would think every oil company in the United States had a great incentive to go out and produce more oil. The dilemma from a production in the United States is we have only 70% of the rigs drilling for gas and oil in the field now as we did back in fall of 2019, even though prices are almost double what they were. And that's because of things changed in 2021 and policies were anti-fossil fuel, terminating pipelines, and the leases for new gas and oil went away. So the United States doesn't lease any more oil and gas leases in the western U.S. The western U.S., most people don't realize, most of the West is owned by the federal government, all the land. So if you're going to produce more oil and gas out in the West, you got to get permits from the federal government. And they stopped leasing them in early 2021, and since then our production has actually declined in the country.
And now so we got production going down, and what about demand? Where are we seeing demand for natural gas?
Yeah, demand for natural gas is up 6-7% over what it was a couple of years ago. So it's roaring, both for domestic consumption. We're closing coal plants in the United States. That used to be 50% of our electric production. It's down to 25% and going to 20%. And natural gas is filling the void. So the demand for natural gas is roaring up. Domestically, demand for natural gas worldwide is going up because of all the Ukraine and European issues. They're trying to export all the gas out. So we're seeing rising demand, and yet we're not increasing the production. So prices go up.
Right, certainly so. And then with the pipeline issue, so natural gas, it's not like oil. You can't just put it in a barrel and ship it. You've got to. How does it get moved, and why does that put a cap on us?
Yeah, it's. Natural gas needs to be moved in pipelines, and the traditional production for natural gas was all out in the Gulf of Mexico and Texas and all that. 10 years ago, when the shale revolution took off, all the new production came in actually in Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia. Well, there weren't enough pipes to get all the gas that can get out of there, and so they're constrained. So if we don't add pipes out of the West Virginia, Pennsylvania area, we can't grow our gas production. And there have been 5 or 6 pipelines that have been slated to get built. So one of them, it was actually 300 miles and they only had 25 miles left to go, and federal judges are blocking them because they didn't do a climate analysis of what these pipelines would do to the climate. All the while the country's seeing a doubling, tripling in natural gas prices. So it's a challenging environment right now.
And then exports, you mentioned exports. So we're sending a lot of our natural gas overseas. Kind of, can you give it an idea? Like what's the scale from maybe what we were doing, 5 or 10 years ago to today?
Yeah. We have went from almost no exports to now 12-15% of our natural gas is leaving the country exporting, and in the next 3 years we'll go to 20% of our natural gas will be exported. And the reason being, while we're paying $6-7 or $8 for natural gas here, in Europe they're paying $60 to $70 per million for that same gas.
Wow.
And so it's hugely profitable. It's a huge need around the world. We're short natural gas and oil, and so the world's willing to pay a lot more to get it, and you're going to see it keep getting exported as we build new terminals. Right.
And so with the challenging environment for natural gas, Florida being very, very dependent on natural gas, we are the Sunshine State. What about solar? Where does that play?
Yeah, solar in Florida, we're probably 2%, 3% of our electricity's from solar. Over the next 5 years will be 7 to 10%. And that doesn't sound like a big increase, but that is a huge increase when you look at the land required to do this. So we're going to grow it, but the dilemma is going to be it's only available 28% on average, and so you can't run an economy on 28% available resource. Just like if I told you, hey Dan, I'm going to give you a car that starts 28% of the time versus the car that starts all the time, you go, that's not a very good trade-off, right? So we're going to add some of that, but we're going to still have to have the dependable resources, the natural gas plants, the nuclear plants, and all those others to be dependable and run, because the sun doesn't always shine. Obviously in Florida all summer long, between noon and 6 o'clock, we're going to get rains and the clouds are going to come up. Well, that's when our loads peak, and if the sun isn't going to be there.
Right. So it sounds like it's a good kind of on the margins to help out, but it's with today's battery technology, we're a long ways away from a replacement for natural gas.
Yes, and if you think, that's right. And the technology for batteries is there. It's not the technology's not there, it's the cost of the batteries.
Okay.
The cost is so high, and with all the people running to electric vehicles or this big push, the electric vehicle people will pay far more for a battery than anyone in the power sector would. And so it's just not going to be cost effective for quite a while to put in major battery facilities.
Now, earlier you mentioned Texas not being as reliant on gas as Florida is, and I believe that's because they have a lot of wind in Texas. Where does wind fit in Florida's energy picture?
Yeah, it's a great question. Florida, like the entire southeastern United States, we don't have good wind except when we don't need it, like during hurricanes. But otherwise, the southeast does not have winds, and so there's really not a good makeup there. You need 20 to 30 mile an hour sustained winds day after day after day. In the United States, most of that wind is from Texas up through the Dakotas, in the plains area. That's where all the wind is. But down in the southeast, not just Florida, it's not good for wind.
So solar only on the margins, wind's not really a thing. We get a little bit of nuclear, and I know in Leesburg we used to get more when Crystal River was up and running, but it was shut down.
Right.
What does the kind of landscape for nuclear look like right now?
Nuclear is a great technology and could be very low cost. The problem we have in the country is it's so heavily regulated, the costs are just out of sight. And you compare the power sector of nuclear to this other part of the nuclear which no one pays attention to. All the subs and the nuclear ships that show up in the military, show up in all the ports around the United States. Nobody thinks a thing of it, and there's not all these regulations over there, and they're all equally safe, and you haven't had any fatalities as a result of all this. So nuclear could be the answer, but politically, until we change the regulatory process, it's not going to be the answer.
And there are no facilities under construction right now in Florida?
No. There's 2 facilities in Georgia which are completing. They cost overrun by 3 times what they originally cost. Part of that's the regulations that go on. And yet other countries like France, 70% of their electricity comes from nuclear. They're all designed the same, and you don't have the overburdensome regulations that you do here.
Right. Okay. So it sounds like we're stuck with gas for a while, and that's where we are. And so back to that. So clearly in Leesburg and other municipalities that are part of the FMPA, we're seeing the increase natural gas, having to unfortunately pass that on to our customers. What are other power companies in the state of Florida seeing? What does that look like?
Yeah. So all of us, every utility, whether it be an investor-owned utility like a Duke that's around here, or the co-ops, Sumter, who gets power from Seminole, all of us are experiencing the gas price increase. How soon they pass that increase along, it's a little different. So here in Leesburg, when we give you the bill, you immediately say, I need to collect this money, and so the rates here have went up as gas prices, especially starting in June and then throughout, went up. The investor-owned utilities like a Duke or someone like that, they didn't immediately increase because they got to go to Tallahassee to the PSC, get the changes approved. So what they've done is filed for an increase that will start in January of next year to collect all the money that right now they're not collecting from customers. And on top of that, they're going to actually have an increase because they're projected higher natural gas prices next year. So they're going to get a double whammy starting in January. Where Leesburg, you've been moving the rates up right now, but come January, your rates are actually going to be in a much better place than some of the ones who've deferred that cost increase.
Right, and I think that's a good point. As natural gas prices come down in the future, we'll be able to lower our rates much quicker. And we do know that they're coming down because through the FMPA, you go out and you hedge your gas prices. So you've actually bought power for next year already?
Yeah. So the board, as they saw the price increases, they shot up and they said, we don't want to be subject to big run-ups in the short term. So over the next 2.5 years, we've bought gas at much lower prices than they were in the front end. So we're going to be able to provide you all a predictable, stable, and relatively affordable price. So we're not going to get a surprise and go in 1 month we got to increase the bills by 30%. We've taken that out of play. The board has done a nice job in managing that. Some of the others don't have that ability to do that, and so they're going to have to, they may defer it for rate-making purposes, but they're going to jam everybody later.
Right, and I do think it is, while that's good news that, we've hedged some of that gas and we've got some lower prices, I do think it's important people realize we're not talking about the $2 to $3 that we've seen the last decade.
Yeah. I mean, we were $2.5, $3 2.5 years ago, 2 years ago. We've locked in prices here recently for a year and a half out at like $4.50. But at $4.50 is a lot better than the $9 we were paying in June and July.
Absolutely. So at some point in the winter, spring, things will get a little bit better.
Yes.
Not as good as they were 3-4 years ago, but
right.
But we're moving there, and we are protected out then. So that's good news. So. Well, great. Well, I really appreciate it. I think there's a really good overview for people about how power works for Leesburg, how the natural gas markets work, where alternative energy sources fit in, and what people can expect in the future. So I thank you for being here, and really appreciate your time. Yeah,
thank you so much. And I just close in saying, we realize that all our customers in Florida, all the cities are, they're facing increases in food prices and energy prices that are probably $6,000 more this year than last year. And so we're working hard to try to do anything we can to help customers, because we know that, average customers in Florida just can't afford these increases. So thank you for the opportunity to explain what's going on, and hopefully we can serve you even better.
Thank you. That was some great information, and I think people will really find it beneficial understanding the landscape of public power with utility rates and exactly where we are and what we can expect in the future.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, especially in Leesburg. Leesburg does a great job of providing low-cost power. Al Minner, the city manager, and his whole team, and you as a commissioner, have always focused on providing low-cost power and being very good about managing the system well. And you're one of the lower-cost cities in the municipal ranks, and that's in great part due to how you manage the system and how the team here does it. So everyone in Leesburg should feel good. Yes, power prices are up, but you're doing very well compared to others, and we see all 31. In fact, we track all the utilities in the state, so we know where you're at, and you're in a very good place.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Now, please stay tuned, because coming up, we're going to be talking about ways that you can save money on your next power bill.